April 23, 2026. 4 days after 8 children were shot dead in their beds in Shreveport, Louisiana, federal prosecutors charged a second man. His name is Michael Mayence. He is 54 years old. He claims he helped raise Shamar Elkins. And when Elkins finished killing 8 children and shooting 2 women on the morning of April 19th, the first place he drove to was Michael Mayence's house. When police searched that house after Elkins died in a shootout on the front lawn at 490 Brompton Lane in Bossier City, they found multiple firearms inside, and here is the detail that makes this case something far more disturbing than a single act of domestic violence. Mayence had been under an active domestic violence protection order since October 2024. That order was served on him in December 2024. It was not set to expire until May 2026. Under federal law, any person subject to a domestic violence injunction cannot legally possess a firearm. Mayence allegedly had several. The man who helped raise the killer of 8 children was himself living inside a domestic violence legal restriction with guns in his home. That is not a coincidence. That is the environment. On April 23, 2026, the United States Attorney's Office for the Western District of Louisiana charged Michael Mayence, 54, by criminal complaint with illegally possessing a firearm while subject to a domestic violence injunction. Mayence faces up to 15 years in federal prison. U.S. Attorney Zachary Keller put it directly: the fact that Elkins fled to the home of a man who himself illegally possessed firearms while under a domestic violence order reflects exactly why this conduct needs to be deterred. That statement is not just about Mayence. It is about an entire network of people around Shamar Elkins who are operating outside the law, with weapons, in an environment saturated with domestic violence and illegal gun access, and the system around them either did not know or did not act. Let's go back to the first arrest, because the 2 cases together tell a story that neither one tells alone. Charles Ford, 56, was charged on April the 21st with felon in possession of a firearm and making false statements to federal agents. The ATF traced the rifle used in the Shreveport shooting and followed its chain of possession back to Ford. The original purchaser of that rifle identified Ford as the person she had given it to. Ford, a convicted felon who cannot legally possess a weapon, initially lied to ATF agents and told them he had never had the gun in his possession. That was false. He later admitted he kept the rifle under the seat of his truck and believed Elkins had stolen it. A court affidavit says Ford confronted Elkins about it but let it go after Elkins became offensive. Let that land for a moment. Ford confronted a man he knew had likely stolen a rifle. He knew that man was legally prohibited from possessing firearms. He knew because Elkins was one of the very few people who ever rode in that truck with him. And then he let it go. Ford said he noticed the gun was missing around March 9th. That is 41 days before 8 children died with that weapon. 41 days where Ford had a choice. He made it. He chose silence. Ford faces up to 15 years in federal prison for the possession charge and up to 5 additional years for lying to federal agents. So now we have 3 people charged in connection with the deaths of 8 children: Shamar Elkins, who pulled the trigger and is dead; Charles Ford, who owned the rifle illegally and stayed silent for 6 weeks; and a Michael Mayence, who helped raise Elkins, who had an active domestic violence protection order against him, and who had multiple guns in the home that Elkins ran to immediately after the shooting. 3 men. Not one of them should have legally had access to a firearm. Every single one of them did. And in the middle of that triangle of illegal weapons and unaddressed domestic violence, 8 children between the ages of 3 and 11 went to sleep on the night of April 18th and never woke up. Now let's talk about what the city of Shreveport knew and what it chose to do about it. In March 2026, 1 month before the shooting, the Shreveport City Council voted to withdraw from a partnership with the Caddo Parish Sheriff's Office to operate a domestic violence resource centre at a new police substation. 1 month before the deadliest domestic violence incident in Louisiana history, the city of Shreveport voted to pull resources from domestic violence infrastructure. The mayor's office said it was working to support a comprehensive domestic violence centre separately, but the timing is a fact, and it sits alongside another fact that the Shreveport police chief acknowledged directly at his press conference on Monday, April 20th. The chances are good this was not the first time. He said that about Elkins and Shaniqua's relationship. The police had no prior domestic violence calls on record connecting Elkins to his household, but the chief believed, based on everything the investigation was already revealing, that what happened on April 19th was not the beginning of something. It was the end of something that had been building for a long time without anyone outside that household being aware. According to Shreveport Police spokesperson Chris Bordelon, many of the children appeared to have been shot in their sleep, with most shot in the head. 8 children, ages 3 through 11, shot in their heads while they slept. That is the physical reality of what happened inside that house on West 79th Street before 6 in the morning on April 19th. The children who tried to run made it to the back door. Investigators found bullet holes in that door when they processed the scene. The door did not save them. Most of them never had the chance to reach it. Christina Snow was the first target. She lived on Harrison Street, about a block away from Elkins and his wife Shaniqua. Elkins shot Christina Snow in the face. Her aunt told CNN he went over, knocked on her door and shot her. She was able to have Siri call 911 for her. Shot in the face, 9 times based on what investigators later confirmed. And she used a voice command to call for help because her hands, her mobility, her ability to physically dial a number had been taken from her. Siri saved her life. That is not a metaphor. That is what happened. Elkins then took her 3 children, Braylon, Kedarion and Soraya, and drove to West 79th Street where the remaining children were sleeping. By the time Keosha Pugh called her family from the roof of that house, screaming that he had shot and killed the kids, all 8 were already gone. Keosha Pugh, Shaniqua's sister who lived in the house with her 12-year-old daughter, broke her pelvis jumping from the roof. Her daughter landed with scratches. A 12-year-old girl jumped off a roof in the dark while gunshots were still firing below her. She got up. She did not freeze. She did not wait. She got up and moved. That decision, that physical act of getting up off the ground in the middle of a massacre, was the reason the outside world knew what was happening while it was still happening. Keosha's phone call from the backyard is what brought officers to the scene at 6:01 in the morning. Everything that happened after that, the chase, the identification of the Harrison Street shooting as connected, the location of the stolen red Kia Sportage on Interstate 49, all of it started because a 12-year-old girl decided to get up. Now let's address the system failures in sequence, because there were multiple and they happened at different levels. The first failure was 2019. Elkins was arrested in 2019 near Caddo Magnet High School after pulling a 9mm handgun from his waistband and firing 5 rounds at a vehicle. Children were playing outside less than 300 feet from where those shots landed. He pleaded guilty to illegal use of a weapon and received 18 months probation. A man fires a weapon near a school where children are present. He pleads guilty. He goes home on probation. Under Louisiana law, that conviction banned him from possessing firearms until 2029. He had them anyway. Nobody checked, nobody followed up, nobody confirmed that a man who fired a weapon near children no longer had access to weapons. The court processed the case and closed the file. The second failure was February 2026. Elkins attempted to take his own life. He was taken to a VA hospital for a mental health evaluation and stayed for approximately a week and a half before being released. He was sent back home, to the same dissolving marriage, to the same financial pressure, to the same household where his identity was fracturing in real time. His brother-in-law, Troy Brown, asked Elkins if he needed to go back to the hospital, and Elkins said he was just going to deal with it. The facility released him as stable. His family described him as coming home happy. Happy is not the same as healed. The VA gave him a week and a half and an exit. It did not give him a structured aftercare plan with follow-up contact and monitoring. It gave him discharge paperwork and the same front door he had walked in through. The third failure was the phone call on Easter Sunday, April 5th, 2 weeks before the shooting. Elkins called his biological mother Mahalia and his stepfather and told them he was having dark thoughts, including suicide. He ended the call abruptly after saying some people don't come back from their demons. The people on the other end of that call were not crisis counselors. They were not trained to recognize that what they had just heard was a man telling them goodbye in the only language he had available. They did what most families do in that moment. They hoped, they prayed, they believed he would get through it. Most of the time families are right. This time they were not. A woman named Michelle Silver, who knew Elkins for 25 years, said she regrets not returning his call in the days before the shooting. A phone call she did not return. Not because she did not care, because life moves forward and calls get missed, and most of the time that is not a tragedy. This time it was. The 2026 Shreveport shooting is currently the deadliest mass shooting in the United States this year, and the deadliest mass shooting in Louisiana history. According to the Gun Violence Archive, there were already at least 114 mass shootings in the United States in 2026 as of the date of the shooting. 114 mass shootings before April 19th, 6 of them before the Shreveport attack qualified as mass murders. And this one, the one that killed 8 children who were asleep, the one that was entirely domestic, the one where every weapon involved was illegally possessed, the one where the system had multiple entry points and chose the lightest available door every single time, became the worst of them all. Troy Brown said it with the simplicity that only grief that deep can produce. I've lost 8 parts of me because I loved each and every one of them like they were my own. His son was among the 8. His daughter was the 12-year-old on the roof. His wife fractured her pelvis. And he is still talking to cameras because those children deserve to be witnessed by someone who loved them and is still here. The Louisiana Governor's Foundation. Love One Louisiana covered all funeral costs for the 8 victims. The Community Foundation of North Louisiana launched survivor funds. Celebrities across the country, including Cardi B, publicly offered financial support to the families within hours of the news breaking. And a community in Cedar Grove is rebuilding memorials with balloons and pinwheels and stuffed animals, because that is the only language that remains when every other language has been exhausted. Charles Ford faces up to 20 years in federal prison across his 2 charges. Michael Mayence faces up to 15 years. The investigation by the ATF, the Shreveport Police Department, the Louisiana State Police, and the FBI is ongoing. Federal prosecutors have said explicitly that they will continue to hold accountable anyone who gave Elkins access to weapons or facilitated the environment that produced April 19th. If you or someone you know is in a relationship where there is fear, where there are threats, where there is a voice telling you that you cannot leave, the National Domestic Violence Hotline is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, completely confidential. 1-800-7997-233. You do not have to announce that you are leaving. You do not have to confront. You build a plan quietly with people you trust completely, and you move when he does not know it is coming. Jayla, Shayla, Kayla, Layla, Markadon, Graylon, Kedarion, Soraya. 8 children who deserved every single ordinary day that was taken from them before the sun came up on what should have been just another Sunday morning in Shreveport, Louisiana.